My name is Amish Tripathi. I'm the director of the Nehru Center. Thank you so much for coming in and for joining this online conference. Nehru Center, as I'm sure you're aware, is India's premier cultural center internationally, and we are at this lovely heritage building in Mayfair. But unfortunately, we cannot host you at the building itself. But we have moved online. We're moving with the times, and many of our programs are online now. And today is a particular moment of delight because we are here to launch Rageshwari Swaroop's book. Rageshwari, if you could just come on, switch on your video so that people can see you.
Hi.
Hi, Rageshwari. How are you?
Hello, Pranam. To all my elders, a big hello to you, Amish, and hello to everybody who's watching us all across the globe. Lovely to be. Thank you for having me.
People are here in good numbers, as can be expected for you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Before we begin, a request to everyone. Of course, the standard housekeeping calls during any Zoom call. I'm sure many of you have been in webinars already. Zoom Barabar Zoom is the most popular line these days. But if you can just keep your videos on mute through the conference, our team will also be controlling that. There will be space at the end of the program for question and answers. We will throw the floor open, and at that time you can either post questions on the chat, or you can click the icon and wave your hand, and you will be called out to raise your question. And we will try our best to get through all questions, but considering it's Rageshwari's event, I think if we are not able to go through the questions, then we will share the chat with Rageshwari and she can email back her answers. And we'll post that on our website. Okay, so now we begin. Before beginning, if I can just make a request. I mean, I know some of you are not Indian, but most of you are, and this is an emotional moment for us Indians. So if I may request for a few moments of silence in honor of our brave soldiers who've made the supreme sacrifice in defending the motherland, and those of you who want to contribute money to the Army Central Welfare Fund, you can do that by going to the website indianarmy.nic.in. Whatever your heart and mind feels is appropriate. If we can just have a few moments of silence, please. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And thank you for those of you who aren't Indian. It's very gracious of you to honor the sacrifice of our Indian soldiers as well. Thank you so much. Thank you. We'll begin the program now. So not that Rageshwari needs an introduction, but obviously one has to go through the standard process for any event. So, let me tell you a little bit about Rageshwari. Rageshwari is an actor, singer, and former MTV VJ and a motivational speaker on the power of wellness and mindfulness. Her own recovery from facial paralysis at the peak of her career in 2000 was the beginning of her journey into mindfulness. Her miraculous pregnancy is another testament to the power of wellness and mindfulness. Rageshwari has worked with the legendary Jack Canfield and released India's first affirmation CD with the path-breaking guru of affirmations, the late Louis Hay. Her videos on meditation and the ancient Tibetan rites have gone viral on YouTube. Rageshwari's diverse work takes her across the globe, from performing at the Nobel Peace Center to working with His Holiness Dalai Lama to working in India for the Melinda and Bill Gates Foundation on maternal mortality. Rageshwari is one of the most exciting speakers globally on motivation, wellness, and mindfulness. Rageshwari resides here in London currently with her husband and my good friend, Sudhanshu Swaroop, and a 4-year-old daughter, Samaya Swaroop. Rageshwari, what a delight to have you here. If I can just say again, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mish. Thank you so much. It's an honor. It's a pleasure. It's just far. It's a huge dream come true for Penguin and for me. Thank you.
It's completely our honor and our pleasure. We're going to jump straight into the questions because I don't want to keep your readers away from the questions they may want to fire at you. So let's jump straight into our conversation.
Yeah.
So the questions that we've kind of thought and put together. Let me begin with the first. I mean, going through your book, you talk of a very interesting story with Shekhar Kapoor, who's also a common friend, about your inability to depict romance on screen. Right? And considering you're such an open-hearted, warm person, it's one of the things which I found extremely bizarre. I didn't think that was possible. So, what got you to the film world, man? And then MTV, then singing. I mean, to work in Indian films and not know how to act romance. You know, इश्क नहीं कर सकते हो, फिर आप क्या करोगे फिल्म्स में?
That's so true. But you see, this is all about childhood patterns. Most Indian girls, always have very strict fathers, very strict brothers. Now, my father
is here, by the way.
Yes, I know, because he loves you.
Uncle, what do you say to that?
He's liberated, but I have a very strict brother. So I would so much so even look at someone I liked and I had to tie a Rakhi. So all my non-Indian friends who are watching, Rakhi is with this holy thread that you tie onto a brother, on a man's wrist, and then he becomes a brother. So you cannot have romantic thoughts at all. So Rishabh actually was assisting Shekhar Kapoor. So my brother's a filmmaker, and so he was assisting Shekhar on one of the shoots. I must be 13 or 14, and I was accompanying Rishabh on the shoot, and I was always acting, but because I loved performing. But my definition of performing is very different than what you see in Bollywood. If you are an actress in Bollywood, then you have to know how to be seductive and romantic. While I love just being jovial, I love the characters. So playing characters basically. So Shekhar said, you need to be an actor. And I was thrilled because I thought he's going to give me some fun role where I could make people laugh. So he called me for the screen test because he had to launch Dharminder Ji's son, Bobby Deol. And I have the screen test and I'm looking at Bobby, hey, how are you? All of this. And then Shekhar says, okay, now cuddle him. Like me? Yeah, I mean, you're the love of his life. And that's it. I just completely froze. So I realized that if you really want to be really big in Bollywood, especially an actress, and now things are changing, you've got to be so easy where depicting romance is concerned. So it's such a paradox, but I've also grown to be much more loving and understanding what love truly means. So I've talked about childhood patterns, right? When we grew up, it's such a paradox. Children cuddle, we ask our little toddlers, kiss, 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 cuddle, cuddle, this uncle, this auntie, this wonderful person you're meeting. Then suddenly as they grow, we have such interesting paradoxes where we say, you can't do this now you can't fall in love, or this is not right, and you can't go out on dates, especially in India. It's so interesting. You have these nuances. So I grew up with that. Amish, I grew up with that. I almost felt dating is something that I shouldn't ever do. My brother was thrilled about that. She's someone who grew up without any boyfriends. And then I had my heartbreak. And then, of course, see how much I learned.
One of the things is, it's not just psychologists, but even spiritual gurus, masters, they say that of course, childhood defines our character to a massive extent. But so as do events which are life-changing, which happen through life. Everyone has their share of challenges. Everyone has their share of grief. As the great Gautam Buddha had said, grief is the fundamental reality of the universe. And one of the things I always found so inspiring about you, because I knew you had gone through a facial paralysis episode in 2000. And, you show no scars at all of it. I don't mean physically, I mean mentally, emotionally. You're so warm, you're so open, and which is so inspiring because I've gone through a difficult personal phase in the last few years, and I find you so inspiring on this court. Talk us through that. How did you go through that challenge, and how to emerge completely unblemished. It's really inspiring, but it's very difficult for most of us to do.
Thank you. Thank you, Amish. Childhood, of course, is the template, for your life. But yes, when you have challenges and when you have failures, that's when you have the opportunity to really realign your life. So yes, my childhood was very, very simple. I come from a very simple family where my memories are of just eating lunch and dinner on, our steel plates, and my parents would spread the newspaper on the floor. But we had the most magnificent upbringing, and the talks. So the talks were mostly about never giving up. The talks were mostly about enjoying the journey rather than always worrying about the destination. I look at your quotes and I read your books, and Amish, that's why I love and admire you so much, is because you speak about life. And I'm glad that my parents spoke about that and they lived it as well. So when I had facial paralysis at the peak of my career, I just, I loved my work, but I was living it in a superficial way, just living out of suitcases, just completely happy with what was happening, but thankfully very humble, because when I came home, nobody really cared that I was this MTV pop star at all. It didn't matter, which I'm so happy about. When the facial paralysis happened, more than my face changing, because you see, I always love to be characters. So MTV wanted everybody to be cool and sexy. I wanted to be the funny one. So thankfully the face and my mouth was now touching my right ear. So that's how lopsided it had become. What affected me was that I could not speak and I could not communicate. And what affected me was the pain it caused my family. But my friends, interestingly, were lovely. Most of the people are well-meaning, and what they said actually made me just go into a shell, and I think it was forced solitude as I look at it, and I started that journey. And when you realign your life, either you can go into addictions, go into many more love affairs, or wreck your life and then still find yourself. That path is also okay if you choose that. Thankfully for me, I just took the shortcut, which was really, I dived in because I had no choice. By default, I was all alone because I did not want to meet people. I couldn't speak, so I was speaking with a slur. So, and then started the journey. But yes, the childhood is the template of your life, because what rang in my ear was what my parents always said: meditate, beta, meditate, meditate. They would say, and I would laugh at them because I was this cool MTV kid, like, meditate. And then finally I gave that a chance and I realized, my goodness. And then it just snowballed into my life that your inner world creates your external world. You cannot have blames. And then I looked back at my inner world that yes, I had a terrible heartbreak, my first heartbreak. And then the year after, I was just so negative. It was all about blame. And that's what we do after a heartbreak, isn't it? We gather people and say why he was wrong and why she was wrong, because we want to feel and sort of acknowledge to ourselves that no, we are fine and we're not to blame. And then we have many more love affairs to prove to ourselves we're still worthy, to validate ourselves. And I think I learned those lessons very quickly, that I can't blame anyone for my facial paralysis. I brought it onto myself. It was a tough thing when I heard Jack Canfield, who is like a guru and a motivational speaker for me, say that to me, that you could have got this onto yourself. But then everything changed. So I'm so glad you see the positivity. It's work in progress.
People can react negatively to that also. When something terrible has happened to you and someone tells you brought it on yourself, especially something where it's, I mean, what could you have done? I mean, if one thinks rationally, what could you have done to bring this to yourself?
True.
And you can react negatively as well. What made you make that different choice that no, you will accept it?
Well, 3 days I did not accept it. I did not feel like talking with Jack, because you take it so personally. You see, your ego is, and you're brought up. Childhood patterns again. As children, we brought up because we see everyone blame. We blame you, and that's something. I mean, as humans, we love to blame, right? And that's why the pandemic is so where in many ways confusing. We don't have anyone to blame. We always love to blame people.
It's fashionable these days as well. Everyone wants to blame
yes, but
my parents, my community, my country, history, whatever, but nothing is my responsibility.
Look at mindfulness. It actually teaches you that no, blame actually gives the power away. And That's why law of attraction is so powerful. It's not about, oh, think what you want and you get it, but it's so spiritual because it brings the onus onto you. It's cause and effect. What you're thinking creates energy. Each word has a frequency. When you consistently think of it, this is what it creates in your body. And you can see it on people, you can see it with lives. And so if you really want to learn and really be happy and stress-free, take the onus onto yourself. And that's when you'll realize. So you attract a partner who you feel is not vibing or in synergy with your vibe. Like, what am I doing to attract this? Or you're working with a colleague who's not understanding. What am I doing to it? I mean, I get a cough and a cold and I think, who have I not forgiven? But it's a beautiful way to live because the power is with you. No, I cannot blame anyone. It just is so liberating. But it took time. It took time to understand that. And once you understand that, you love challenges and you love failures. So that's when, you really, really think you can enjoy life. Even the tragedy that we've had in our film industry now, because it takes a celebrity and then everybody understands, my goodness. But for us, every life that we lose with suicide is a tragedy because we don't teach our children very young. We teach them history, geography, maths, and I know you love history, and that has to be there, of course, but parallelly, we have to teach children life skills, that you are unique the way you are. You don't have to be unique if you come first in the class. You don't have to be, you don't have to feel unique if you're a genius today. You could be a genius tomorrow, like Einstein was, not really celebrated in school, but then he redefined history with his mind. So we need to teach children that you are unique and resilience. Don't worry about consistently making your children feel happy. What they need to know is, hey, listen, fall down 7 times, get up 8. That is important. And I guess those lessons, not that my parents said that, but it was somewhere at the back of my mind. And so today, I can't blame anyone, just myself. True.
It's not about how many times you fall, it's about how many times you get up.
Yeah.
Dust yourself off and start walking.
But
Ladies and gentlemen,
yes,
beauty with brains. Is what we have in Rageshwari.
So is Amish. All my British friends who've logged in, and a lot of Indian friends, they find him very beautiful, my dear friends. They all chase me for his number.
This is about you. So the next question. This is a slightly personal one.
Sure.
Why did you choose an arranged marriage? I mean, not that I don't love Sudhanshu. He's a lovely guy, and you have an absolutely delightful husband and even more delightful daughter. So, but why did you choose an arranged marriage? And then, of course, the consequential shift to London. I mean, you've been in India, and you're so Indian, at heart. So talk us through this decision. Would have been a big decision, right? Shifting here.
Yeah, yes, it was. So after my heartbreak, I've written about this. It would have been tougher for me to write about it, 20 years back. But at this point, it was just beautiful to really write about heartbreak and to say that, it was difficult for me to not have affairs, because that's the first thing you want to do. You want to fill up that vacuum. And I took a long time for closure. I was like a turtle. I really took a long time. And then when I really felt I was ready, I started to affirm that I would love to have a companion, and whatever it is that you feel, for growth. It's always for growth. We have such very, very faulty definitions of why we should marry, right? Because the film world, the TV world, oh my goodness, they totally condition you. You complete me. And so then we think, no, that's not what a relationship is for. It was Sudhanshu's wonderful cousin sister, Nidhi, who knew my common friends, and they introduced Sudhanshu to me and my parents. And I loved the work that he was doing, because he's into human rights, and he was working in Afghanistan, in Darfur, and Syria. And I loved the work. So I was interested to meet him, not really jump into marriage, but just very happy to meet him. He sadly Googled me, which I didn't. He Googled me and he saw the false eyelashes and the makeup, and he thought, this lady looks like a troublemaker. And see, there's also conditions, right? Because
high maintenance.
High maintenance. He thought that. And I'm sure people see me and must think that. But
you're not that at all, yeah.
Yes, I'm not that. I'm not. Yeah.
We have to ask Sudhanshu.
But then he realized, because Nidhi and my parents told him that, no, this is not her at all. I call my kitchen my temple. So I'm always really happy just being at home. But I'm glad when he said that, it made me realize that this is a person who's really seeking to understand the real me, and is not really bothered about what I mean to the world. And that was important for me. And more than arranged marriage, we are so conditioned with love and romance. I think our parents sort of see things very beautifully. So I'm old fashioned in that way. And also it wasn't an arranged marriage where we had to only meet once and then we had to decide, but it was easy. We were introduced, and we only wrote letters actually for the first. And my husband, I'm sure, has spoken less to me and more to Amish. And what I love about Sudhanshu is, for example, like he knows, I absolutely adore and love you. And so I'll have, not just me, I'm sure everybody has Amish Tripathi books. So he's sort of, he's happy to celebrate other people. And I love that. There's no insecurity in him. He loves growth. He's a person of, he looks at the positives in life.
He's a very secure person, yeah.
Very secure, very self-assured. And he knows that we must love and appreciate other people. And possessing someone is again childhood patterns, because you see our intimate relationships in many ways, Amish, reflect our childhood patterns. And that's why if you haven't mastered how to realign yourself, then your intimate relationships will be all about that it's all about possessing, it's all about insecurity, being scared or dominating. So I think that's why married so late. We were tired of, said, okay, now let's just be free and enjoy. So that's why I decided to shift. And when I decided to shift to London, I'm so happy. I have such beautiful friends here, and I know that I'm so happy that you're here. I have such lovely friends in the building I live in, and in London. They love India. They love curry. If you make curry, then you're a queen. So it's also a lovely place where I've actually become much more closer to India, actually. I go to the temples much more often. I am much more connected with India now that I'm here. But I still have my Indian passport. For a lot of friends who tell me, I still have my Indian passport.
In the book, you speak of mindful parenting. It's about freedom and respect and raising the vibration at home. I mean, it has gone up in India as well. Divorces, I mean, they do happen. And so, why do you think divorce is not bad? Why do you think that the best thing we can do for children is to love and respect the spouse?
Yes.
Even if the parents don't live in the same house.
Yes, absolutely.
Sometimes it can be two very good people, but things don't work out. Neither of them are at fault. Things don't work out. And what do you think children seek most then from their parents? And this is an issue that is, we used to have this thing that these things don't happen in India, but yes, in our generation, it's more and more common. And this is an issue worth speaking of. And you refer to it in your books. What do you say?
Yes. So, when I was writing about this with my lovely editor, Roshni at Penguin, we wanted to really be honest where mindful parenting is concerned. So mindfulness in simple terms is, of course, always living in the present, not worrying about the past. That means not having any guilt and not reminding people of what they did wrong, right? So it has very interesting ripple effects. And then not really worrying about the future. Now, children live mindfully naturally. So we don't have to teach mindfulness to them, but we can
They're
learn.
always in the present.
Yes, especially the toddlers. So mindful, they're so present, you can reprimand them.
Certainly, Samaya.
Oh, certainly, yeah, she loves you. so yes, there's so much to learn. They can be crying one moment and the next moment they're ready to forgive you and cuddle you. So there's a lot and that's why mindful parenting, or parenting for me, is to bring up the parent and not the child. That's why the word parenting, it's not childrening, it's parenting. So in many ways we can learn a lot from children. And that's what mindful parenting is, to really let them be free and to take cues from them and to understanding, I need to let go of hierarchy, I need to let go of ego. Now, why divorce is not bad? Because firstly, definitions of marriage are faulty, right? We marry and we think, my goodness, this is forever. This has to always last. And that's when I'm considered a success. We grown up with those beliefs. I mean, even me as a lady, we're sort of taught that the greatest thing you can do is get married and then have a child, and then you're told, oh, the child will now get married and all of those things. So why divorce is not bad is because children actually are not born with that thought that my parents will live with each other forever. That doesn't matter to them. But because they're born out of love, they are subliminally hardwired to believe that my parents will love each other forever. So for them, it's all about love and mutual respect. And their definition of love is not physical intimacy between mama and papa, but it's about mutual love and respect. So it's okay. And as research says, children adjust very well if sadly parents decide to get a divorce or live separately. But when the children don't adjust is when the divorce was caustic, or when the spouse was parents were bringing each other down, because children see half of themselves in the mother, half of themselves in the father, or if they're partners, they see half of themselves. So when parents bring each other down, children take it personally. So you call your spouse a loser or a failure, or people use even more caustic terms, then children take that personally. They think, oh my goodness, half of me is a failure, half of me is stupid, or whatever words you use. And that's why children mostly grow up with those insecurities. And then they really cannot subliminally match those associations when they grow up, because they've never seen that emotional bond between the parent. And it doesn't have to be that parents have to live together. So you could be physically separate, but if you emotionally bond and communicate with children, they understand beautifully that mama and papa love each other and we're deciding to live separately and grow from them. So relationships, as we need to teach children that relationships are for growth. We have to be students. What do I learn from this? I'm married, it didn't work out, but what do I learn? What have I learned? And then sure, if you want to end it, but with the acknowledgement that I grow from here and nobody is to blame.
I think that's such an important insight. It's important for each parent to realize that it's for the sake of the child that you must be gracious, generous, respectful. You should not make it toxic. Yeah.
True.
Because the child suffers. Very true. Very
true.
Very insightful.
It comes with time. It comes with time, but at least the thought. And that's why mindfully always be aware. This is what I'm feeling. This is my ego talking, and this is my evolved self. At least the acknowledgement that I'd like to be like this. And then you grow from there. Because the ego always comes up.
One of the most powerful things in the world.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
So let's speak about another powerful thing. You speak of the most dangerous word in the world.
Yes.
Let's discuss that.
Let's
expand.
Sure. So we have a chapter called The Power of Yes. And we start with the chapter, talking about Mark Waldman, who's this amazing brain researcher. But let me tell you that whenever I wanted the book to be spiritual, but I also wanted it to be scientific, because I wanted youngsters, I wanted educationists and teachers to realize, my goodness, we are not talking about just spiritual stuff. We're talking about everything that's backed with science. Now, Panchatantra said this hundreds of years ago, Amish. And so a part of me is happy that you will say, oh, good, she knows about this. So Panchatantra would say that 0 to 7 is the most critical age in a human being's life, because children are almost subconscious. Yeah. So they're really, really like sponges. They're taking in everything. So Panchatantra would say, refrain from saying no. Try to beguile the conversation, navigate the conversation, but refrain from saying no, because no is such a direct word to just say cul-de-sac, it's ending. There is no option for you to grow. Now, science research today says, as Mark Waldman says, that you flash no in front of a human being for less than a second and neurons start to die in the brain. It's so interesting, because the moment you hear a no, the brain shuts off its happy centers and the motivation centers immediately. So when we start a conversation with no, I don't think the idea is, there you go, I've stopped listening to you. Whether I like it or not, whether you like it or not, my brain has asked me to stop listening to you. And what is the word we use with our children the most? Mostly it's no. Parents are on an autopilot because they're so stressed with their life. They want to get the child away. And they're like, no, Mama, can I play in the rain? No. Can I have a no? So what we're trying to say in that chapter is rethink mindfully how many times you say no to a child. So we did lots of experiments with lots of parents, and they said, no, I don't really say no much. And then they realized, my goodness, I say more no's than you could ever imagine. So the most dangerous word in the world is no. And we've talked about the growth mindset. Words like fail, how could we bring that, take it away from the education system? Instead of saying you failed and you've passed, we could say passed, and then just instead of saying fail, we could say not yet. So these are powerful words because we really condition children, even ourselves. I mean, you take an adult, and when you say no and you failed at this project, it brings the morale down. It has ripple effects where mental illness is concerned, because words have energy, words have a frequency, words have a power. So when we say no, you could actually use many more options with your children. It's difficult, but with practice, you can do it. And with a toddler, my goodness, like, yes, I immediately start saying yes. And then I start to think, what can I say now? I don't want her to eat the candy, chocolates. So you learn.
What would you say to those who would say that part of growing up, certainly up to 7, one agrees. What would you say to those who would say that part of growing up beyond a certain age is also realizing that you don't always get what you want, that you have to learn to accept no at times? How do you answer to those who would raise that doubt?
Now, the thing what I'm saying, Amish, is no actually programs you to believe that life is over, that the battle is over, when actually it's not the truth until you give up. You see, until you give up. So that's all there is to it, that when you grow up, you become a teenager and you did not get this job, but you'll get another. And you did not win the gold medal here, but then you'll get another. So life is all about movement, as you beautifully say in your quotes, that life is all about that amazing journey rather than worrying about the destination. But if you see, we adults, that's why are disconnected, because we were told by well-meaning parents, well-meaning teachers, you become a scholar, you'll be happy, then you'll get this amazing job and you'll be happy, and then you'll be the most amazing CEO in this company and you'll be happy. So happiness was always a moving target. Correct. And that's why you see we're chasing this moving target all the time. It's like my husband, I mean, he's a QC, but he's saying, gosh, I worked so hard, I thought this was supposed to be the reward, and now we've got to rethink. No, life is all about this journey. So when you hear a no, you've got to immediately tell myself, this is the person trying to say, my battle is not over yet. It's still going on. Now, whether you choose to call it a battle or life. So for me, failure does not exist. It's growth. And that's what I learned when I had the facial paralysis, that, listen, you have to embrace your challenges. You have to love your failures. And we're never taught that as children, isn't it? If you fail, you're a nobody. If you fail, you're reprimanded at home, you're reprimanded by your teachers for sure. So that's important for us to reframe. Ajit?
Some Indian parents would even put pressure, 99 kyun mila? 100 kyun nahi? Where did that 1 mark go?
So true. So I thank God, I came from just a creative family where my parents did not even know his exams. I mean, sorry, I want to stick to English. My parents did not even know when my exams were. My father would say, you're going to school, fine. You don't want to go to school, don't go, but carry along. So yes, I mean, in India, we are hardwired, and that's why, of course, academically, we are brilliant. But what I mean to say is that
the pressure
our minds, like how you redefined education, you did it all, and then you followed your heart, and you said, this is what I want to do. This is where my passion, this is what expands your energy. This is what we need to teach our children, maximizing your own true potential, self-discovery, rather than worrying about parental expectations, teachers' expectations. No, just go, maximize your own true potential. So what I meant was try to refrain from saying no to your loved ones as much as you can, and then tell them, see, this is not working out, but showing them that the path is still open for you to grow. The growth mindset. Yeah,
it's such a lovely way. You put it beautifully, actually. It's not a no, it's just a not yet.
Yes,
so
it's not yet.
Which ties back to what you were saying earlier. It's not about how many times you fall. It's about getting up again and
Yeah.
again. Yeah, that's what keeps
Yeah. And
that's the success attitude.
yes, and as adults, it may be difficult for us to process, but we
Mm,
can learn, we can relearn, we can reparent ourselves. But
mm.
children don't come with these preconceived notions, and so they take this knowledge very easily. Yeah, of course, not yet, not yet. Absolutely, keep trying. Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay, I think we'll open it up to audience questions now. But before that, so I don't have a physical copy of the book thanks to COVID. It's not Penguin's fault, but the physical copies of the book aren't available. So I read it online. So this is the cover for those who don't have stereoscopic eyes. I'm trying to show it out here. This is the cover. Do check it out. It is available, right, on Amazon UK as well.
Yes,
Uh,
Amazon on Kindle, and Roshni at Penguin, of course, said it's pre-orders are really important to authors because we all want to be Amish Tripathi. So he's the icon for all of us. But yes, so they can pre-order copies, but it's available for everybody on Amazon and on Kindle to read.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to go through the group chat.
Of course.
And wow, you have a lot of questions. Okay.
Really? Okay, great. All yours.
Okay. Sanjay Roy is saying you're looking good. I'm assuming he's telling that to you,
You.
Rageshwari.
No.
I was saying that to you, Amish, post your
Oh, shut up.
No.
I have sent Rageshwari my compliments separately.
You're looking good too, Sanjay.
Enjoy.
Okay.
Oh, we love Sanjay.
Rageshwari, you're getting more compliments than questions.
Oh gosh.
From Chinu, inspiring as always. So true, Amish. Beauty with brains. Perfectly suits for Raga.
Thank you.
Okay. Satish.
Sanjoy is the coolest dancer, by the way. I hope you know Sanjoy.
Sanjoy.
Like you cannot imagine.
I didn't know that. Sanjoy. We never danced together in Jaipur Lit Fest.
Bollywood events. Oh,
Huh.
Sanjoy would do these amazing Bollywood events. So we traveled
What
with
the hell?
SRK.
Sanjoy, I have known you for what now? 9 years.
There's a popular
Ladies and gentlemen, Sanjay Roy is the world famous director of the Jaipur Lit Fest,
Cannot
and most
imagine.
importantly, a dear friend. And I didn't know you dance, Sanjay.
Like fabulously.
I have a popular side to me, Amish. We all do. Very happy to
Okay, but the focus back on Rageshwari then. Satish Desai. Rageshwari,
Satish.
he is saying children of single parents are missing a lot as a question. He says, I don't think so. One person support is also fine for a child. But I think that
It's a powerful question.
yeah.
Can
So
we take that?
I think you
Yes.
were in consonance with that, but Rageshwari, if you could just, yeah.
Absolutely, Satish. In no way am I saying there's, for example, my dear friend Sushmita Sen has adopted beautiful girls. But, and I've just done a video of for fathers now, but her relationship, her emotional bond with her father, her brother comes to the forefront. So what I mean is not that children learn just what the relationship between the mother and the father is, but your emotional bonds. How are you forming those bonds? So when a husband and a wife decide to separate, if there was a single parent to begin with, fine. Then the children will find associations with the bonds you create with the people around you. But if there was a husband and wife right from the onset, and then if you break those ties with caustic behavior, then that has repercussions. For example, I'm talking about divorce, absolutely fine. I'm talking about fathers now, parental alienation. Parental alienation is when one spouse keeps the child away from the other spouse, if you know about that. What I mean to say is respect to all the families that the father's passed on. The child learns to accept that. But parental alienation is when one spouse is keeping the other spouse away from the child. That has repercussions because the child learns, why is my father being kept away from me? That they cannot come to terms with. And that has serious implications. So I meant it in that aspect, that if your relationships are amicable and loving and harmonious, that's perfect. You could bring up your child on your own, as Sushmita is a perfect example. But brilliant. She has harmonious relationships with everyone. I mean, look at the relationships she has even with her ex-partners. They're always loving. So it's not about the breakup. It's about how harmoniously you handle the breakup, if I made sense.
Yeah, no, you make complete sense. It's about grace here. And of course, there'll be a few, people who may not be proper, but more, and parents, both mothers and fathers, would obviously ache for the love of their child. Yeah? So
Absolutely.
if for the sake of the children, if both the husband and wife keep the relationship gracious, uh, and civilized, it's good for the child. Yeah,
Absolutely. And it's freedom.
very, very wisely put. Very wisely put. Ashish Virmani is saying, what a marvelous evolution to an enlightened and actualized individual. You are, Rageshwari. Super questions, Amish. Thank you. I'll take that compliment. Thank you. Okay. Richa Bhardwaj, it's wonderful listening to you, Raga. Satish is asking, okay, Satish, this is the last question I'll ask of yours because you only get 2 maximum.
Oh,
So
sweet,
he's
Satish.
saying, how do you make children face discrimination? Important question, Nageshwari. Satish's question is, how do you make children face discrimination? Perhaps he's asking, how do they handle it? Discrimination.
In what aspect? Are we talking about?
I suspect racial discrimination, class discrimination, any form of discrimination. How do you make children handle it?
Firstly, I feel that, right at the onset, we start comparisons with children. I mean, assessments for that matter. Right at the beginning, we are all about comparing. And that's the root of all evil in life, because we are never ever taught that you are unique the way you are. So yes, how you can actually avoid that is how beautifully you end hierarchy in your home. How lovingly are you speaking with your staff? So when people in the West talk to me about racism, I connected to my own country that, I mean, are we okay with our staff? Is there no hierarchy there? How do we talk with people who are our cleaners, our home carers? Just the word using, I feel uncomfortable to even use the word maid or a servant. These are words which are actually not kind. So I feel end the hierarchy right there. And then, children are not good at listening to you, but they're very good at imitating you. So if you want to teach them equality, then you just walk that path and they will grow up to be kind and loving. They observe how you're talking with people who you don't know, and especially the ones who cannot do anything for you. And they will take the cues from there. And it's mindful parenting is very, very simple. Takes the onus away from everyone, brings the onus back to you. It's all about you, Satish.
So wisely put. Children don't follow what you say; they follow what you do. So wisely put. So wisely put. Vidhu Sharma is asking, what's next on your authorship and creative journey?
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Is it Bijoy?
No, Vidhu Sharma.
Vidhu.
Yeah,
Vidhu, I'm actually now going to be assisting Amish at the Nehru Center. So we are Archana, there's Archana,
come.
Guhare ji. So we're all going to be working at the Nehru Center. As you see, I also, no, that's serious, because I want to always be with Samaya, at least till she turns 7. So all of my work is connected with being present at home physically, and of course being present mindfully with her. So my work is going to, take me, just keep me here, but my soul is very much in India, and I will keep coming there as well. But one day at a time. Today, all my time is with Penguin, but then of course, I work, I look forward to my working with Amish as his team member, with Archana and Guhare ji and Sandeep ji, and bringing more events to you.
Awesome. Rageshwari Prabhakar Kaza has an interesting question. That he says that yes, pushing people beyond limits can break them, create mental depressions. That is a fact. But unless we push kids and people to perform better, then are we not doing justice to them? And essentially, I guess he is asking, where do we draw the line? He's saying a man's reach should be a little beyond his grasp. That's when the life, very beautifully put, Prabhakar. Good question. So what do you say, Rageshwari?
So Prabhakar, thank you. In no way am I saying do not allow an individual to maximize their potential. Okay, absolutely. But And Amish will be so thrilled when I say that. So the book in many ways also reflects what our holy books say. So for example, Gita, the shlok Amish would know, where we talk about that leadership and parenting is very similar, that you keep discipline little less and you keep motivation out there. So what we need is motivation, where we forget about mistakes and failures, where we inspire the child to maximize their own true potential rather than worrying about this is what I expect you to be. No, it's about you maximizing your true potential and discovering yourself. I mean, we as adults also perform much better if we had a boss consistently over my head saying, have you done well? Have you done well? Have you done well? Listen, you better do well. And listen, I'm really going to be upset if you don't do well. And this is how we are expecting our children to excel. Comparisons. This person is doing really well. Why can't you stand first? Like Amish said, even if you do not score 100%, even if it's 99%, is not good enough. The scarcity syndrome that we're living with, we do away with that. We keep our ego aside. We're not worried about the child has to fulfill our unfulfilled dreams. And that's what I'm saying. That
is so
course,
nicely.
we have to let them follow their potential, and they will, because that's human evolution. That's about motivating them. And like I said, they will imitate you. So are you really putting in your best? Are we complaining, or are we being lethargic? For example, yes, happiness is sitting and watching TV. And so we had to make a decision that we're going to give up TV so that Samaya understands, listen, that's not a reality in this home, but it's about reading Immortal India, or it's going to the park, or it's just playing, even if it's kitchen utensils. So that there's that beautiful line, that it's a beautiful dance between exploring your true potential, letting you be, and growing from there.
I think very nicely. Oh, hi, Samaya. Okay. Christine Zedek has an important question. Christine, for you, Rageshwari. I have a question. Isn't saying no also equally important to protect oneself, both physically and energetically?
Christine, is that Christine?
Yeah, basically protecting boundaries.
Yeah. Thank you, Christine. If you're talking about boundaries where children are concerned, no, they learn from boundaries that we create. So when no is concerned, I would say that it could come when it's a matter of safety. So of course you're going to just scream no if your child is going to run on the road. But yes, where women are concerned, I don't know, I sense if you're talking about women to men, or men saying, creating boundaries with, I'm very gender neutral, so I work for men's causes. So what I mean is, I'm sensing if you're trying to use the word no, that yes, this is what I would not like, absolutely, please go ahead and use that. But what I meant was not using no is a definite no when we consistently use it for children. So minimize it. And of course, you would know that this is the time for me to definitely use a no. I would use it when I would run into the main road for sure. Absolutely. It would just come out naturally.
There is a question from Cheney's47. Sorry, I don't know the name. I'm assuming that's a surname, Cheney's. Children are different, and so are the ways of bringing them up.
Yes.
So just being children-oriented may not work for all. Maybe some need guidance, discipline occasionally. What's your view on that?
Oh yes, all children are different because we are all so different. But there is one truth that unites us all, that all adults, most of us are a little disconnected from our true selves. And if you go in front of the mirror, you'll immediately realize how critical we are of our own selves. So when we see anything lacking in children, it comes from a point that we've actually not mastered a harmonious relationship with ourselves. The more critical we are of children reflects a little about ourselves. So mindful parenting is basically just awakening your inner child and just really having that beautiful bond with yourself, because your bond then reflects the bond that you have with everyone else. But yes, each child is absolutely different. And that's where mindful parenting will come, that you observe them. And this comes right in our kindergarten and schools, where we expect every child to be social, which is wrong. And sometimes teachers, parents, get a little concerned that this child is not social. This child loves to sit by himself and herself. And I would instantly say, no, that's fine. Einstein was very much like that, or maybe Amish was like that as well, because they're loners, they love thinking, they have this amazing big inner world, or they are living what Swami Vivekananda always said, that be with yourself. So it's absolutely fine as well, as long as you are social and harmonious with your own self. And that's one of the bigger problems we're facing during the lockdown. People just don't know how to handle being with themselves. So every child is different. Realize what they're all about, and when you observe, you'll get the answers, because you can't teach parenting to anyone. You are intrinsically gifted to look after your child, but keep ego aside, keep hierarchy aside, and then you'll flow. But for yourself first, right? We ourselves are so hard on ourselves.
Ragesh, very interesting question from Lalit Sharma. He says, in today's world, where one is being, children could be bullied on various media like FB or Twitter, or how can one avoid getting affected by bullying? I think important question. It does. Social media has made bullying in some ways that much more vicious. People can become far more vicious on Twitter as compared to how they are, face to face. It's one of those bizarre things that happen. How do you manage that?
Yeah, firstly, the relationship with social media it needs to be handled differently. Firstly, parents need to understand that this is a phenomena that's not going away. So you need to first accept that. Don't snatch away the social media from your teenagers, especially if you have teenagers, my goodness. And when we have any kind of an addiction, it's lack of a connection. So the more time you spend with your children, being curious, rather actually just being curious, rather than saying, why are you sitting on Facebook every day? Just be curious about, so who are your friends and all of that. And for me, I really go back to what Panchatantra said. And that's why they were so ahead of their times. And that's why we had so many scholars during that time. And science backs it today. We have to teach children that their inner world creates the external world. So you build so much resilience and a feeling of self-worth that nothing from the external world can really now destroy that. So when we don't have families that are really strong, where you're truly healed, where you really know your self-worth, then people coming and telling you that you're no good or there's bullying actually will not exist, because then there's freedom to come and talk to parents and freedom to go and talk to your teachers that this is what's happening, or listen, this doesn't make sense. And this is a person who's actually quite bitter within or fighting a hard battle within. And that's why he or she is projecting this through this veil, through the Facebook or through Twitter or whatever.
I think just to add, I don't know if you're aware, Rageshwari, many of the founders and the CEOs of tech companies, of these very social media companies, don't allow their children access to social media. So I read somewhere that apparently Steve Jobs' own children, he won't even allow them access to a smartphone.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
So it's interesting that many of the top people in the companies running these social media companies don't allow their children access to it. It says something, perhaps.
Wow. Well, so parents are for all to see, but I personally believe no matter what problems come from the external world, if you're really, really strong, you will just have the tact and the wisdom to really understand how to deal with it. More, the family module has to be extremely strong.
Rageshwari, Indu Barot has a question for you. Should parents be overprotective for their child?
It comes from a good place. I understand. It comes from a really beautiful place, because that's what we want to do. We want to protect them. But happy children, just happy, keeping the child happy, keeping the child safe, will actually also keep the child away from facing challenges, and to understand that actually there's great joy in failing and there's great learning where challenges are concerned. And thank God that research now proves that your brain actually only grows when you fail. When you're buying cars and when you're collecting awards, there's no shift. So be there for your child, of course. Like, I've never told Samaya about the stranger danger fact. I'm always there anyways with her, just tagging along, and allow her to meet everybody, but I allow her to go on the highest swings, even though I have to hold my breath and watch that. But it's her journey, and humans anyways, we learn, right? We learn from our own mistakes. Don't we all know that? We know that with our relationship with our parents. I kept saying, oh, when will you learn? When will you learn? I'll learn. So that's what I want you to do, that, you let your child be free. Of course, be there. Just like mindfulness is all about, we watch our thoughts. So we watch our children, we let them know that we're always there, but just go out there, make your mistakes, because you learn from them. And I love you even more when you make your mistakes. I love you even more when you're going through your challenges. And that's when you'll have a truly powerful individual. And coming back to the previous question about bullying, and you'll realize what it is because you'll have the power to handle all these issues.
Yeah, I think very beautifully put. You should prepare the children for the road rather than preparing the road for the children, because you're not going to be there all the time. So might as well toughen them up so that they can handle whatever comes.
Yes, beautifully put, Amish.
Yes. Pamela and Mayers, I hope I'm pronouncing the surname
yes.
right. Is that correct? Mayers?
Mayers, yes. She's a very dear friend of mine.
Yes.
And
okay. Hi, Pamela. Pamela's question to you is, how do we as parents and adults increase our ability to connect with a subtle energy knowledge to know how to guide our children? And before you answer this, how much more time do we have? 5 minutes? You can
there's
take
5 more minutes.
Questions? Huh? Yeah. Okay. So if you can answer Pamela's.
So like I said, well, Pam is a very spiritual girl herself, and we have just a lovely spiritual group with Amy. But like I said, Amisha, Samaya is 4, and she meditates with me, and it's quite interesting. Even though she wouldn't be quiet and she would be restless, and now she's just understood that when she gets nervous, there's a scary monster, and when I take deep breaths, the scary monster subsides. It's so interesting. We have to walk the path. They will understand our subtle energies, and in fact children only understand our subtle energies because they're so aligned with happiness. That's why you go into a party and they'll run to the happiest person, because they match their energies. In the same way, we adults immediately get attracted to people who make us happy, is because they remind us of our childhood. So children will align to your subtle energies if you raise your own vibration and are there at all times. So if you have a little child, consistently affirm how you want them to be, rather than reprimanding them for how they are. Accept them for how they are. For example, I have a lot of parents who say, my children don't study, and then they consistently affirming that all day, my children don't study, my children don't. They tell that to their neighbors, they tell that to the teacher. They consistently, so the entire home is vibrating with that energy. My child doesn't study. It's ringing in the child's ear. Then when they go to the child's room, they say, please study. The child will not. So it's about you really living it every moment of your time, every moment of your life. And children will totally accept it as the only way. So she takes deep breaths and she understands meditation. And she just knows that there is no blame in life. You cannot really blame anyone. And what can I learn from here? And just enjoy life as much as you possibly can.
That's so interesting when you're talking about the scary monster.
Yeah.
My ex-wife used to do this wonderfully with our child Neil when he was young. If you'd ever get upset, she would say that there's a mind monster now, and she'd done it so well. She'd actually made it into like, oh, this bizarre mind monster has come to trouble you, and he would actually start laughing. Okay, wow. Neil. So he'd be upset. She'd say, oh no, the mind monster has come again. He was like 3-4 at that time. It worked wonderfully. Yeah.
How beautiful.
Yes. Brilliant idea.
It is so powerful. So yeah, sending love to Preeti, sending love to Preeti, and no wonder Neil is so enlightened already. But that's how children are, because they listen to, they're learning to handle these really powerful emotions. We adults cannot handle these emotions, right? We cannot really put it into words why we're feeling this way a certain day and not uplift it on a certain day. So yes, the mood monsters, as we call it, are very, very powerful. The mood monsters, how are you feeling today? And then they realize it, and they take the cues from us.
Yeah.
So I hope we all have happy monsters today living within.
So before we get to the last question, an announcement, just for everyone. If you want to come to more events like this, because Nehru Center is, of course, doing many more online events, do go to nehrucenter.org.uk and please register at the box at the bottom for newsletter. So you'll get updated with the wonderful events that we organize, such as what we're doing with Rageshwari. nehrucenter.org.uk. And you can join. It's completely free. It's a government body. We don't charge anything. It's completely free. So there's a question, and I promise there's a last question, Rageshwari, then I'll let you go.
My pleasure.
So there's a question from Sanjay Roy. Yeah, he's back. So Sanjay's question is, even as hatred and violence surrounds us, there has been an increase in the sense of mindfulness.
Wow.
Do you feel that empathy, mindfulness, and love can push back hatred and violence?
Absolutely. Only that has the power. As His Holiness Dalai Lama would always say, people have always said, the greats have said, if we could only meditate, if we could only meditate. And then we have a lot of people praising the eyebrows. What meditate? Because what does meditation do? It basically helps you connect with your own self. It basically tells you there's no need to fear anything. It's all about embracing reality. It's all about really telling yourself, listen, I'm perfect the way I am. Even if I wasn't told so in my life, I'm perfect. There you go. So that releases the stress that we have, because basically it's all fear, right? Someone will leave me, someone will hurt me, someone will take the money away, someone will take my power away, or my child is not going to fulfill my dreams. So all these fears start to just get suppressed. Absolutely. And when Sanjoy speaks so beautifully that there's hatred on one side, but there is growing mindfulness and a feeling that we are the interconnectedness, as Modi ji and as Amish say, right? Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, that we are one big family. So when we consistently focus on that, focus goes where energy goes, focus goes where energy goes. So let's start focusing on mindfulness, on love, on acceptance. And we need to bypass this duality. It's difficult, but it's possible to at least to teach our children. We need to bypass that, that we are separate. We are all one. Children understand that. That's why they hug and kiss anyone. They have no divisions in their mind. And that's when I think we'll have the most beautiful, loving relationships, the most beautiful romantic relationships, the most amazing professional relationships. Bypass duality, bypass this separation.
Very, very, very wisely put. Very wisely put. Good question, Sanjoy. What a lovely way to end this event.
Thank you, Sanjoy.
And Rageshwari, you know my team well, so the team keeps reminding me and telling me stuff that I need to say. So one of the things I have to say is, guys, we are on Instagram and Twitter as well. Just search for the Nehru Center. Follow us. You'll get to know of the programs that we are organizing, and please do join us on Zoom. And we normally broadcast our programs on our Facebook page as well. This program was also being broadcast on our Facebook page live. And the last thing, Rageshwari, before I let you go, because I work with publishers as well, and I believe Penguin, a representative of Penguin must be on this call, so I can understand what will be driving them. So if you want to speak, you want to show the book cover, where all it's available, you want to reinforce that message, please go ahead. Let's make Penguin happy.
Penguin from Aishwarya, Millie, from Roshni, they all love you. And they're just so happy, that the government and the Nehru Center, IHC, and Amish Tripathi would choose building a happy family to coalesce with. So we are just thrilled. And like I said, we want to really connect with people. The entire idea of the book is to really change yourself, change the person in the mirror, and then automatically it will have ripple effects. So I think Roshni and Aishwarya are just happy that we're all together, and people will pick up the book. Oh, there she is, just saying thank you to you.
Thank you, Amish. Just having you do this session has been an honor. Oh, so sweet. Thank you. Thank you, Roshni. Thank you so much. So
we all love and revere and respect you so much, Amish. And now, of course, Nehru Center all the more. So we're right here for you all the time. So, the journey, the book continues, but living it is more important.
Awesome. What a lovely way to end this program. Thank you so much all for joining us in such huge numbers. We had close to 60 participants at one time. Rageshwari, I expected this to be a huge, lovely event, and I'm not surprised at all. I'm going to check out the Facebook Live numbers. I'm sure they'll be rocking as well.
Wow.
And all the best to your wonderful book. All of you, those who haven't read it, do rebook, do read it. It's a wonderful read. All right.
Thank you. Pranam to my
Bye.
elders. Lots of love to everybody. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.